Welcome to Reading the Word, قراءة العالم. Each episode, we take one question at a time, carefully, clearly, and without shortcuts. Today's question is, AI and the humanities. Who shapes knowledge now? I'm Ali Al-Hajji, and joining me is Dr. Rachel Karim, whose voice you're hearing through 11 labs. Dr. Rachel Karim is a researcher at the intersection of AI, voice technologies, and the humanities, focusing on how language and data shape knowledge, authority, and interpretation in an AI-driven world. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you, Ali. I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate that you named the technology up front, because voice and trust are part of the story.
Exactly. In episode 2, we asked whether knowledge is ever neutral. This episode continues that thread, but with a new pressure point. AI systems can now generate text, summaries, arguments, translations, and even voices. So let's begin with what people usually mean when they say AI is changing knowledge. Rachel, what do they get right, and what do they miss?
They get the scale right. AI can scan huge amounts of text, find patterns, and produce fluent answers quickly. It can do in seconds what would take a person hours. But what many people miss is that fluency is not the same as understanding. Speed is not the same as judgment. The humanities are trained to ask, what is the context? What is the history behind this concept? Who is speaking, from where, and for whom? Those questions don't disappear because the output is fast. If anything, they become more urgent.
That difference between pattern and meaning feels central. Could you explain it without technical jargon?
Sure. Think of AI as very good at learning what usually comes next in language. It learns statistical regularities, which words cluster, which phrases sound plausible, which arguments look coherent. But meaning is not only about plausibility. Meaning depends on situation. A sentence can be grammatically correct, persuasive, and still miss what matters. It can ignore tone, irony, historical baggage, or cultural reference. Humanistic reading tries to stay with those details. It reads language as an action, not just a container of information.
So when an AI system produces an answer, the humanities ask, what kind of answer is this? What kind of reading did it perform?
Exactly. And also, what kind of world does it assume?
Let's go there. When we hear trained on the world's knowledge, it sounds generous, even democratic. But humanities scholarship is skeptical about the word world. Whose world is inside the data?
It's an uneven world. Some languages dominate online. Some institutions dominate publishing. Some communities are over-documented, while others are under-documented, or documented through the lens of outsiders. And AI training data is not a neutral mirror. It's closer to an archive. And archives are political.
Political in what sense?
In the sense that archives are built through decisions. What gets preserved, what gets digitized, what gets translated, what counts as reliable or standard. Even the categories matter. How data is labeled and classified shapes what the system can learn. In humanities terms, the archive is not just a storage space, it's a structure of visibility.
That phrase, a structure of visibility, connects to the syllabus example from episode 2. A syllabus looks like a list of texts, but it's really a map of what counts as central and what counts as supplementary. AI training data feels like a syllabus at planetary scale, except the editorial decisions are largely invisible to the public.
That's a great analogy. And invisibility is power. If you can't see the decisions, you can't contest them.
Let's make it concrete with one example. People often say, AI is biased, but that can become a slogan. How do you explain bias in a way that keeps the historical and institutional dimension visible?
I'd say bias is not just a glitch. Bias often reflects how society has already organized knowledge. There are famous cases where technical systems performed worse for certain groups because the training data underrepresented them. The point is not simply that the system is bad. The point is that the dataset is an inheritance, of whose lives are treated as the default. And beyond recognition systems, the same dynamic appears in language. If a model mostly learns from elite institutions, from dominant languages, from certain genres, it will treat those norms as neutral.
So neutrality becomes a style, not a truth. The style of standard language can masquerade as universality.
Exactly. And the humanities have long studied that. What counts as proper language is often connected to class, education, region, and power.
This raises a tricky question. If knowledge is situated, does that mean nothing is trustworthy? Does it mean everything is propaganda?
No, and I'm glad you asked it, because people often hear critique as cynicism. Saying knowledge is situated is not saying knowledge is useless. It's saying knowledge comes with conditions. It comes from a standpoint, a method, an institution, a set of assumptions. Critical reading doesn't reject expertise. It takes expertise seriously enough to interrogate it.
Let's slow down on that sentence, because it's one of the main ideas of the episode. Critical reading does not reject expertise. It takes expertise seriously enough to interrogate it.
Yes, and that's why the humanities matter now, not because they produce easy answers, but because they teach us how answers are produced.
Let's shift to authority and trust. Because in everyday life, what people experience is an AI system speaks with confidence. The language is polished. Sometimes the voice is literally human-like, and the output feels authoritative. What is happening there?
Two things. First, AI compresses time. When answers arrive instantly, we start to confuse speed with truth. Second, AI changes the experience of voice, and I mean voice in two senses, style and sound. A polished paragraph looks like expertise. A natural-sounding voice can feel like presence, but presence is not the same as accountability.
Accountability is the key word. In academic work, if you make a claim, someone can ask, "Where is your evidence? What is your method? What are your sources?" But AI outputs can feel finished without showing the pathway that produced them.
Exactly, and that's where a humanities approach can help even non-specialists. When you read an AI answer, you can adopt a simple checklist, not to be paranoid, just to be responsible.
Let's give listeners that checklist. What are the questions?
Here are three, in plain language. First, what is this answer assuming? Second, what is missing, or what could reasonably be different? Third, who benefits if I accept this framing as natural or neutral?
That is very reading the world. Who speaks, from where, and for whom? But applied to AI outputs.
Yes, because AI outputs are part of discourse now. They shape how problems are defined. They shape how people learn. They shape what feels obvious.
Let me add one more layer, because many listeners will recognize this experience. Sometimes an AI answer doesn't just sound confident, it also sounds academic. It includes technical vocabulary. It may even include citations or the appearance of sources. In the humanities, citation is not just decoration. It's a way of showing your pathway, who you read, what tradition you're entering, what evidence you're relying on. So what happens when AI produces the aesthetic of scholarship without the scholarly pathway.
That's a crucial point. A system can imitate the surface features of academic writing, footnotes, references, that careful tone of certainty, but it can also fabricate details or blend multiple sources without telling you which is which. This is why critical reading in an AI era also means being attentive to form. Ask, is this citation verifiable? Does the source actually exist? Is the claim anchored in something you can check?
So we need a verification habit.
Yes, and you can do it without becoming a full-time fact-checker. Here's a practical 3-step method. First, treat the AI answer as a draft, not a conclusion. Second, triangulate. Check at least one human-curated source, like a book, an academic article, or a reputable encyclopedia entry. Third, ask the AI to show uncertainty. What are the strongest counter-arguments? What are the limitations of this explanation? If the answer collapses when you press it, that tells you something.
That last step is important. It's not only, is this true? It's, what kind of confidence is appropriate here? Because some questions are genuinely contested.
Exactly, and the humanities are comfortable with contested questions. They teach us that disagreement is not a failure of knowledge, it can be the condition of serious knowledge.
Let's bring world literature into the picture. Because your work sits in digital humanities, and this show is about reading across languages and cultures. Imagine someone asks an AI, give me the 10 most important novels in world literature. What could go wrong?
A lot. Not because lists are evil, but because lists look neutral when they are not. The model may overrepresent what is widely digitized and widely discussed in dominant languages. It may repeat canonical choices that already circulate in elite institutions. It may underrepresent works that are less translated, less archived, or less discussed online. So the list can become a feedback loop. A model repeats a canon because the canon is already repeated.
So AI can amplify the existing center of gravity. It doesn't necessarily create a new canon. It can harden an old one.
Right, and the humanities give us language for that. We can ask, what counts as world here? What counts as important? Who has had the power to define those categories?
This connects to translation, our next episode. But let's preview the problem now, because AI is increasingly used for translation and summarization. What do humanists worry about when AI translates ideas across languages?
We worry about the illusion of equivalence. Translation is never only technical, it's interpretive. Words carry histories, concepts carry institutional baggage. A term in one language may not map neatly onto a term in another. AI translation can be extremely useful, but if we treat it as neutral transfer, we lose the politics of meaning. We lose the fact that translation always chooses.
So, in a way, translation is the clearest example of knowledge is situated. Even when the goal is accuracy, the pathway is interpretive.
Exactly, and that's why the humanities are not anti-technology, they are pro-interpretation. They keep asking what is at stake in the transfer.
Let's talk about education, because this is where the stakes become personal. Some people fear that AI will replace reading and writing. Others hope it will make education more efficient. But our approach is different. Reading is a method, not a task. So how should educators and students use AI without eroding critical thinking?
I propose a simple principle. Use AI to expand inquiry, not to end it. Use it to generate multiple framings, not one final answer. Use it to surface counter-arguments, not to produce a polished conclusion. Use it to identify gaps, not to hide uncertainty. And then do the humanities work. Compare sources, check context, trace concepts, notice what language is doing.
Could you give one example of a good assignment design?
Sure, Instead of asking students to submit a final essay that could be generated in seconds, ask them to document their reading. For example, have students ask the AI for an explanation of a concept. Then, have them critique it. What did it oversimplify? What did it omit? What voices are missing? What alternative interpretations exist in scholarly work? The point is to turn AI output into an object of analysis. The student becomes the interpreter.
So AI becomes a text to read, not a machine to obey.
Exactly.
I want to return to the question of cynicism, because we live in a time where critique is often framed as negativity. And in polarized environments, nuance is sometimes treated as weakness. How do we keep critical reading from turning into mere suspicion?
By remembering that critique is an ethical practice. Its purpose is not to destroy, its purpose is to remain accountable to complexity. Critical reading asks, what are the consequences of this framing? Who is made visible and who is made invisible? What alternatives can we imagine? That's not cynicism, that's responsibility.
And in the AI context, responsibility includes refusing shortcuts, especially when the shortcut comes in a beautiful voice.
Yes, a smooth voice can be comforting, but comfort is not a guarantee of truth.
Before we close, let's answer the episode's question directly. Who shapes knowledge now?
It's not a single actor, it's a network, models and datasets, platforms and incentives, institutions and curricula, language hierarchies, user prompts, and our habits of trust. AI is part of the network, but it doesn't replace the network, it reorganizes it.
And the humanities matter because they give us tools to see that network, to name it, to question it, to remain accountable to what it hides. Rachel, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Ali. And I'll add one last line for listeners. The future of knowledge isn't only technological, it's interpretive. And interpretation is something we can practice.
This has been Reading the World, Pira'atul Alam, one question at a time. Next episode, what happens when ideas travel from one language to another? Until then, read slowly, listen carefully, and refuse the shortcut.